Hey, thanks for tuning in to That Husband podcast with me, Black Newborn. And today's episode, we have the privilege of having a lot of very special guests. You're going to have to wait to the other side of the segment so you can find out who those guests are. But today, man, stick around because we're going to have a conversation about some things that have happened on this podcast. So we're going to have some reflective moments, but we're also going to address some problematic comments that you guys shared with us. We know you by name. Even if you use a pseudonym and say that your name is dot dot number, what. We have a research team here that finds everything about everyone, okay? So we're going to be addressing some of those comments. I'm kidding. Nobody's getting threatened here, but we just want to break down some comments and really get into the thick of them. And then lastly, man, there's things that we are super excited for next year, things that you want to stick around so that you can get a glimpse of, just so that we are prepping ourselves as a community, as a family for 2025, because man, we ready here, and we want to get you guys ready so that when we start the year, man, we off to the races and we can actually continue making the impact that by God's grace we have started making here. All right, so please, man, stick around, leave your comments, and let's chat together, let's have feedback. And man, let's see what happens on the other side of this episode. Right? See you then. Hey, what's up? Welcome to That Husband Podcast with me, Black Newborn. Here we are husbands who aren't where we want to be, but certainly are not where we used to be. We are imperfect, always failing forward, trying to know better so that we can do better. Hey, what's up? Welcome to That Husband Podcast with me, Black Newborn. This is where husbands try to know better so that we can do better. Before we get into this episode, we want to thank everybody who's been buying us coffee. If you're wondering what that's about, the year hasn't ended. There's a link in our comment section that you can click on and still buy us coffee so that we are energized to continue making more of this content. Speaking of that, we want to personally thank everybody who's been buying us coffee throughout season 1. Man, you guys have loved on us in an incredible way. It's one thing for you to watch. It's another thing for you to subscribe. If you haven't, please do subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that you're updated on every single episode we drop every Wednesday at 11:30. But it's another thing for you to comment. And I think it's just a level higher for you to dig into your pockets, money that you've worked hard for, that you can use for anything, and you give us that money. So we want to thank you so much for buying us coffee. It's really energized us to keep on making more of this content. It has helped us to reach out to people who have stories that we think are worth telling. And so, man, we want to thank you so much. Speaking of thank yous, there's also a super thanks button that you can click to thank us, to continue supporting us. And so we want to give everybody who's given us a super thanks, man, here's a super thanks to you. Thank you for loving us in that regard and caring for the work that we are doing here. Speaking of community, the husband that is sitting across the table from me today, the future husband, the future wife, the current wife, the current single guy, the current single girl, the widower, the widow, the single mother, the single father, the young man, the young woman who is our guest today is you, our community, our family. I was thinking about it just before we shot this episode now. Across all 3 platforms, here on YouTube, on Instagram, and also on TikTok, collectively, we are sitting just under 123,000 people. 123,000 of you decided that you want to partner with us so that we can champion the mission of retelling the story of husbandhood in a more healthy way. You wanted to partner with us as we go on this mission to really impact South Africa and the continent and hopefully the world at large by changing one husband at a time through one episode at a time. And hopefully that's going to impact one marriage, one family, one community, one society, one country, and eventually all of this goodness is going to be felt throughout the world. 123,000 of you. And I know some of you obviously follow us on all 3 platforms, but man, just under 123,000 of you decided, man, This is something that I want to put my name behind. This is a mission. This is a cause that I really want to journey with these guys on. And so thank you so much. Thank you for being part of our family. Thank you for being part of our community. This really means a lot. And if you didn't know, we are just under 9 months. If we are not at 9 months old already as That Husband podcast, because we actually dropped our first episode in March. So we're not even 12 months. We're not even a year yet. And man, you guys have just shown us how far the reach can get, how far the work can get, how much this is needed, and why it is that we shouldn't stop. And in fact, we should continue doing what we're doing because lives are being impacted, lives are being changed. And so what are we going to do in this episode? Again, we want to thank you personally for supporting us, for walking with us, for being here. We want to share some of your thoughts that you've shared with us so that other people in the community who might not have heard your thoughts can now hear them as I read some of your comments today. But there's other questions as well that will give us a clearer picture of where it is that we're going in 2025. We are super excited for all the plans that we have, all the things we've been dreaming about, all the things that we have plotted down. And we want to just let you guys know that you can come along with us in 2025 as we see this mission grow, as we see this work grow, so that we are transforming the lives of husbands who will then in turn transform the lives of their families and societies at large, right? So we're going to do that, but also just get into some reflective work. There's many things that have happened on this podcast. There's many things that we've said. And so, man, we want to just take time, pause, reflect on those, and also just say thank you to our guests. Thank you to you. Thank you to everybody who's, just supported us in various ways. People who've been listening to the podcast. If you didn't know, we also have an audio version of this podcast on any platform that you tend to listen to audio podcasts on. You can find us there, Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts rather. You can find us on any of these platforms, right? So please do check us out there. Do support us out there. Get the word out, and more people should be hearing this stuff and being blessed in their marriages, in their lives, in their families, because I think this work has really touched people across all relationship stages, right? So let's jump into it, and let's just look back and also just be grateful for the future. So these are just questions that will help us to anchor the conversation as we go. The first one says, your podcast reflects raw honesty about marriage struggles. What inspires you to approach such sensitive topics with vulnerability? If you've been part of our podcast, man, for a week, literally for 1 week, you would know that I'm always very open about a core reason, at least one of the core reasons why I wanted to start this podcast. It's to help young children, particularly Black boys, to not have the kind of story I had. My dad left when I was 15, and obviously that has shaped me in ways that have produced the kind of man that I am now. Some of those ways are not healthy. Some of those ways involve brokenness. And so, man, I took it upon myself to say, how do we prevent more husbands who happen to be fathers to not leave their sons, particularly Black boys who not leave their children overall. But as a Black boy, I was thinking about Black boys and just the impact that Black boys who are fatherless kind of have in the society and bring a level of brokenness, right? And so I was like, man, how can I help and speak into that space? So the role of the husband, I believe, has been devalued, and it's constantly just losing its appeal to many people. And if you are a husband who is a father and therefore you are leading a family, man, I know how tough that role can be. Why? Because that's the second reason why I started this podcast. I'm a husband myself. And so I just wanted to encourage husbands to not move away from their role of husbandhood, because it is such a vital and important role that not only speaks to their masculinity, but it speaks into their leadership, as those who are leading families, those who are raising kids, those who will champion a society that's totally different from the one that we are living in now. So I was like, man, how do we encourage those guys to just stay there, stay as a husband, as difficult as it can be sometimes, but there's many joys and there's a lot of good rewards. There's a lot of positivity that will come from you just being rooted firm in that role and not being shaken and not being moved, man, because that role is under threats. That role is being attacked from every single angle. And yet, man, there isn't a lot of people speaking positively in a way that's wholesome towards husbands so that they can be encouraged to stay there. And it's been dope, honestly, just all the conversations that I've been having with husbands and just seeing that come to fruition and seeing guys who are really encouraged and everyone else who's not a husband who's found value, who's found encouragement from this content. It's been such a blessing, man. So for me, personal story, that's there. And then secondly, I'm a husband myself, and so I know how hard it can get. And I have the blessing of being part of a community and having a brotherhood of other husbands who champion me, who I champion, who we care for each other, keep each other accountable. But I know that there's many other husbands out there who don't have a community, and so praise the Lord. And thank you so much for being part of this community, that we've actually created a space for husbands to walk with other husbands and to be seen. And so, man, this has been such a blessing for that. So, yeah, there it is. Question two: in episodes like How I Love My Wife, Care for My Four Kids While Depressed, how do you balance sharing deeply personal stories while protecting your family's privacy? I think this is an important question because it speaks to the kind of brand that we are. Uh, you know, if you want to jump on the internet now, create a podcast, man, the easiest ways for you to probably just gossip about people's lives, to tear down people. It's probably easy for you to, have content that's explicit, that degrades people, that dumbs down the value of the image of God in humans. Because, man, there's just you know brokenness that exists in all of us that's attracted to more brokenness, and so it's harder to do the work of trying to redeem. It's harder to do the work of restoration. It's harder to do the work of protecting what is sacred, and in this case is family, the role of husbandhood, protecting the mental health of husbands who are already faced with a lot of pressures around them. And so what we've done is taken a stance to say from day dot, we want to tell the story of husbandhood in healthy ways. In fact, retell that story in healthy ways. And what that means is we are going to be transparent, but we're not going to have a level of vulnerability that leaves husbands exposed, especially their families or especially their wives. So all the guests that we've had, man, I tell everybody, and I haven't said it publicly, and I'll say it now. We are not a paparazzi. We are not a gossip column. We are not people who are trying to get into your bedroom. So we don't want you to be vulnerable by exposing the most intimate parts of who you are. But we encourage our guests to be transparent. And I think there's a difference. We'll get to it at a later stage in this episode. I'll explain what the difference is between vulnerability and transparency. But what we seek to do is encourage our guests to be transparent in front of a watching world, so that that watching world can be encouraged. And we don't want to do it in ways that tears down their family. We don't want to do it in ways that exposes their marriage, in ways that they might not even be able to recover. We all know that we have skeletons as people. I'm married for 10 years. I have skeletons. But man, those skeletons need to be worked out between me and my wife. So even as I come on these microphones, what is the most redemptive way, without lying, without being inauthentic, without being unreal? I am real and I am authentic, but there's a level of transparency that I can hold, so that I'm protecting my wife and my daughter, even the families of the guests that we have here. So in a nutshell, man, we are trying to be wholesome. We are trying to be loving. We are trying to be restorative. We are trying to build up, and that's what we want to do in this podcast, right? So that's how we are able to speak about very deep things, but in a way that's also loving and building, because we are trying to be restorative. Yeah. How do you ensure that the lessons shared in episodes like Why Most Husbands Fail in the First 2 Years and How to Avoid It resonates with men at different stages of their marriage journey? I think what we've tried to do is acknowledge that, even people who are not married, people who are in a different relationship stage or status, find value in the truth that is shared in this podcast. And so, what we do is always try and think about everybody who's watching. Okay, our heart, our dedication, our mission is for husbands, and if husbands, occupy a role that impacts many other roles in society, so husbands will impact fatherhood, husbands will impact manhood, and therefore husbands will impact womanhood, would impact the states of children, and subsequently societies will be impacted all by the role of the husband. And so if that role is that vital, we know that that role can speak into all other forms of relationships. And so we know, man, truth is applicable to all forms of relationships. And so we keep that in mind. Again, we are very transparent, and we want to be as truthful and as authentic as we can be. And I think, yeah, by God's grace and by you guys, supporting and shouting us out, man, we've been able to do that, to just care for men, for women, in whatever stage of relationship they're in, or whatever relationship status that they're in. And I think it's just been such a blessing to see, somebody who's not married. And this comment comes up quite a lot, man. I'm a woman and I'm unmarried, but this podcast is really helping me. And I'm like, man, this is dope. That's great. That's why we're gonna continue doing this thing. Or I'm a young man, I'm unmarried, don't have any good examples of husbands in my life, but man, found this podcast, and you guys have really changed my perspective. In fact, there was one comment. I forgot this lady's name now, but she was speaking about how all the chats we've been having as husbands, who majority of us have father wounds, and how speaking about our broken relationships with our fathers helped her in her own relationship with her father, her broken relationship with her father, and how that her relationship with her dad impacted how she views men. But now watching this podcast has helped her to have a redemptive, a restorative perspective when it comes to men in general, man. And it's like, yo, like that's beyond us. We're not even sitting here trying to engineer this thing or whatever. And so when results like that come, or feedback like that comes, we are just humbled. We just in awe. And that also encourages us to continue doing the work that we're doing, because, we do get tired. Coffee energizes us, but we do get tired. And so in those moments, it's those kind of comments, it's that feedback that says to us, man, we're not stopping. We're going to continue doing more and more of the stuff, right? Yeah. Your audience frequently comments about how relatable the podcast is. What's been the most impactful feedback you've received? Um, that's a hard one. Um, to kind of single out one comment and label it as the most impactful. I think the journey and how it's unfolded has been what's been more impactful for us as a team. And here's what I mean. Um, there's been different categories of people, and it's people that I know are sitting across the screen now, people that I gave a shout out to at the beginning. So how this thing has unfolded, again, we set out with one objective. We want to speak to husbands. We want to care for them. We want to champion that role. We want to put more value into the role that's been devalued. And obviously, by God's grace and your guys' championing, this thing spills over. And so what's been impactful is how this journey has unfolded, where we've seen a single mother who's raising a son reach out to us and say, man, this has been such an alternative voice from all the other voices that my son has been listening to on the internet. Here's something that's healthy. Here's something that's life-giving to him. Here's something that's going to shape him into the kind of man that I desire him to be. And so there's the single mothers who are, religiously every Wednesday watching this thing with their sons. And that's been such a great thing to see, man. There's been husbands who have reached out to us in the inbox who said, man, listen, I didn't realize that I was actually a crappy husband. I watched this thing and man, I'm brought to my knees. I need help, right? How can you guys help me? Mind blowing, where it's like, yo, it's one thing to dream about the stuff. It's one thing to pray about the stuff. It's another thing to see it happening. It's another thing to see men in real time saying, man, that's me. That's me. I need help. Right. And we're not sitting here as some experts or some people who are holier than thou, but man, we are also encouraged in our own brokenness, right? In our own failures, in our own flaws, in our marriages. When we see another guy saying, man, I need help, I'm like, man, I'm encouraged. I just got off this microphone. I said some stuff, and I probably need to go speak to my wife about some things that we brought up in this podcast now, right? And so that's just been such a great thing to see, seeing young dudes who we know are out there. Some of them we've spoken to them, and that's part of the thinking that led us to create this podcast, who were just like, man, I don't want to be a husband, I don't see any good role models, etc., etc. To see their hearts being changed, to see their minds being changed, man, right? That's just been great to see wives who have lost hope in their marriages. They're currently in a marriage that's unhealthy, and to see those wives say, man, I'm gonna try and give this to my husband. Or even some of the comments that have come through, this has really given us a springboard to have conversations that we were afraid to have. I was afraid to bring to my husband. Then later on, find out that the husband was actually afraid to broach those topics himself. And so now we've given him a mouthpiece to just speak about the stuff. So, man, that's been such an incredible thing for us to see. So I think the whole journey and how it's unfolding, and the different people in our community, in our family, who are part of this journey, this mission, that's been the great thing. That's been, I think, the most impactful thing that we've seen. Yeah. In We Are Constantly Blamed, but Who Calls Out Our Wives? You tackle controversial topics. How do you navigate these conversations while fostering understanding? I think what we doing in there's a couple of things that we do in an episode, but another thing that we're trying to do is demonstrate in real time how to have conversations, whether that's between men, obviously husband to husband, but also between spouses, so a wife and a husband. We want to try and demonstrate in real time how to have a conversation, and part of how to have a conversation means understanding the other person, and understanding means that we're going to listen. Okay, so I'm not listening just to dumb my spouse down or to dumb the other person down, or I'm not listening just so that I can jump in and say, well, this is why I'm right and this is why you're wrong. Or I'm not just listening to quickly just give and make my point, but listening genuinely to understand. Listen genuinely so that we can get to a resolve if there is any tension, or listen so that we can grow and be more healthy and not just survive, but actually thrive in our relationship. And so we want to demonstrate that in real time, as we shooting, as we sitting, having conversations with our guests. There's a couple of episodes I've had with my wife, and man, we wanted to just visibly demonstrate that, visually demonstrate what it would look like for a couple to have a conversation in a way that fosters understanding. So even in that episode that I had with Priv, man, it was a tough one because but tough in the sense of trying to navigate that conversation without stepping on each other's toes. But it was a necessary one because we never want to shy away from anything that we say. And so Priv, like a true brother, again, in real time, demonstrating what it means to walk with other husbands, calls us out to say, man, you said this in this episode. Let's actually discuss some of those things. And it opened up, the canvas, and we saw how bigger this conversation can be. It opened up the floor, and we went deeper and realized, man, how rich this conversation could actually be. And so the hot thing is that we're trying not to step on each other's toes, but at the same time, we're not just throwing pleasantries because we don't want to step on each other's toes. No, but we're loving each other. And so we're going to say the hot stuff. We're going to say the truthful stuff, but say it in a way that is obviously inviting the other person to share their hearts, to bear their hearts, and for us to grow together, right? And so we want to demonstrate that in all the episodes that we're doing. Yeah. What role do you believe cultural respect plays in shaping healthier marriages, as discussed in Cultural Respect as an Interracial Couple? I think that was our second episode, in fact, with Priv, who's married to Catherine. She's a white lady, and he was speaking about just how they come from two cultures, and how before they even got married, that was a big thing for them to find ways in how they gonna respect each other's cultures. And I think with an interracial couple, man, that's an obvious conversation to have. I think a harder conversation is between people of the same race, but also failing to realize that you come from two different cultures, right? At least majority of the time. So you might come from two traditional cultures that are different. So you Xhosa, I'm Zulu, you Pedi, I'm Ndebele, and we get married and we come from two traditional cultures that are different. Or we come from two urban cultures that are different. So you grew up in the hood, I grew up in the burbs, or vice versa. So geographical cultures, if I should call them that. Or you grew up in the village, I grew up in the burbs. And so we can both be Tswana, we can both be Zulu, but we come from geographical cultures that are different. And how do we navigate that? And also, to be more pointed, we come from two family cultures that are different, right? So we could be two Zulus who live in the same hood, but our families are different. And I think that's a harder conversation for couples to have. And so there's a lot of episodes that we've done where we've kind of alluded and, in fact, not even alluded, but spoken about the family of origin and the importance of having those conversations before you get married with somebody. How do we speak about how I was raised, how you were brought up? What's my worldview? What's your worldview? What are our values? Where do we meet each other? What drives you? What are your principles, etc., etc.? The family of origin is always important. And a lot of couples either struggle with that very early on or they cruise nicely because they left their families and they were like, man, I'm done with that. Yo, I'm also done with that. We're going to build a new thing. That's great until you have kids, right? Until you have babies and suddenly everything falls apart and you like, man, how do I raise a human? Where do you naturally go back to? You go back to how you were raised. Okay. And now it's at that point where your husband is trying to raise kids like how he was raised, or your wife is trying to raise your kids like how she was raised. And then you like, heck no, I don't want my kids to be raised like that. And then you start clashing. So speak about this stuff, man, early on, right? And if we are going to make an impact nationally and globally, man, that means as husbands, we need to be speaking to our wives about the culture of our families, because it is that culture of your family that's going to spill over into your street or your estate where you live in your complex, and that is going to spill over into the nation, city, nation, continent, worldwide, right? So we need to be speaking about how healthy our way of doing life, because culture is really that. How are you doing life, okay, in the environment that you find yourself in? Could be your house, could be your street, could be your state, your complex, could be your city, your country, could be your nation. How are you doing life with the environment that you find yourself in? Right? So important chat to have. What's one episode where your perspective changed drastically after recording, and what sparked that change? I think I spoke about this earlier on, but the episode that changed, I mean, all the episodes that we do kind of change something in me. So here's a joke about our team, because we all creative entrepreneurs. That means we don't have money. So the podcast is also our therapy. We can't afford therapy. So this is a therapy for me, for Chris, okay? And for my wife, okay? And Chris's wife. This is our therapy, all right? so best believe, man, we learn from every single episode and we grow. Our marriages are being challenged in ways that are beneficial, in ways that are making us thrive, in ways that are making us more healthy. But one particular episode that really got me thinking about something that I've been talking to a lot of husbands about is Jabu Zwane's episode, where he, I think, so eloquently and brilliantly explained the difference between transparency and vulnerability. There's a big general call for husbands, for men to be vulnerable. And it's like, yeah, man, we believe in that and that should happen. But maybe let's step back a bit and define what vulnerability is, okay? Because men are not in some sense wired to be vulnerable. And here's why: because we are supposed to be providers, protectors, and leaders. And so vulnerability in its, I think, fundamental definition, and that's what Jabu was, clarifying and painting, means that I'm going to expose all of who I am, even my weaknesses. And he says, I quote, that I would give you carte blanche access to my social, physical, spiritual, emotional capital. If I give you all of that, you're going to find weaknesses in that because I've given you all of who I am. And once I do that, which is true vulnerability, man, you could use some of those weaknesses to impact my provision, my protection, and my leadership. Okay. And so I don't think that it's fair for anybody who's not married to a man to expect that man to be vulnerable. I don't think it's fair. Okay. I think it's fair for wives to expect their husbands to be vulnerable because wives are also supposed to be vulnerable. And so the only person I need to give carte blanche access to all of these capitals, right? Social, spiritual, emotional, intellectual, is my wife because she can see my weaknesses. And instead of using those weaknesses against me, in fact, she's going to help me so that those weaknesses become strengths. And what's going to be the result of that? I'll grow in my provision, I'll grow in my protection, I'll grow in my leadership. And so if you're dating, don't expect your boyfriend to be vulnerable. He can be transparent, okay? Because if he's vulnerable with you and you guys don't end up getting married, he's giving you access to all of who he is. And somehow, again, not saying that you're that person, but you could just out of spite use all of that to impact his leadership, to impact his protection, to impact his provision, okay? And so he's only required to be vulnerable with the person who's made a commitment to expose themselves as much as he's supposed to expose himself. And so the pressure for men to be vulnerable, I think, has made it harder for men when they come into marriage, because before marriage, the whole culture is screaming at them, be vulnerable, be vulnerable. And the dude is like, man, I don't know how to be, or even if he knows how to be, he's just like, if I do that, you're gonna take advantage of me. And so by the time he gets into marriage and his wife, who rightly has to ask him to be vulnerable, asks him to be vulnerable. And then he thinks to himself, yeah, man, I've been pressured all my life to be vulnerable. And here you're gonna, no, I'm here to and rest. And so then he struggles to be vulnerable, even when the place and the context, which is marriage, is right for him to be vulnerable, right? So I'm like, man, let's stop this thing of forcing men to be vulnerable. Let's ask men to be transparent only in the context of marriage. And so I'm calling out husbands here. If you are married, if you've committed yourself to your wife, man, you need to be vulnerable. You need to expose your weaknesses. You need to expose all your flaws. Why? Because your wife, who's meant to be your helper, and wife, please be a helper. Don't take advantage of that because this man is giving you all of who he is. Use all of that so that you can strengthen his leadership, his provision, and his protection of you and your kids, your family. And therefore, he can be the husband who will protect the society around him. And if a bunch of husbands are doing that, man, we're going to live in a proper society, right? So one, again, don't expect men to be vulnerable unless you're married to them, but you can ask them to be transparent, okay? If I'm not married to you, I'm not vulnerable with you. I'm going to be vulnerable with my wife only. I'll be transparent with you, right? And so I think that episode really, helped me with that. And there's probably more things that are going to come out around that. How do you hope episodes like Confronting My Past to Build the Future of My Marriage encourage listeners to take actionable steps towards healing? And that was a dope episode by, or we featured Pastor Koketo, Mulaule, and in fact, man, shout outs to that episode because we had a viral moment on TikTok with that episode. It was wild, right? It was wild. It was a Wednesday, and we were like, man, no more Wednesday. We doing stuff, etc., etc. We put out a short on TikTok. That was our first million views on TikTok. And that thing shot up our followers. So, man, that was such a dope moment for us. And it just helped us realize as well just the importance of what he was talking about there. And that is for husbands who then help their wives to achieve their dreams. And so what that episode actually helped me with and to think about, because after that I had a conference that I was speaking at, and it helped me to kind of solidify what it looks like for us to have a family dream. So we both come into our marriage with dreams, and I had a dream to do whatever, you have a dream to do whatever. But as soon as we come together, man, when we are supposed to be one flesh, it also means we are one flesh in our dreams. And so we need to find a way between husband and wife of how we're going to now use family language, how we're going to use couple language for us to find expressions of these dreams. Because I do think, as much as the wife is meant to be a helper, she needs to buy into this vision that the husband is calling her to. And so we need to work out how that looks like. And so the wife's dream is obviously an addition to help with this dream that the husband is calling her to come support and be part of. And so we don't have to discard that initially, but we have to hear what God has implanted in both of us and see how we find expressions for this one new thing that's going to come from both of us now. There will be times that are going to be painful, that are going to be hard. When we come and sit down and go through this exercise and love each other in this regard, at the end of this process, we'll realize, man, that thing needs to go. Maybe what you came in with is not where we are going as a family. And there's going to be a time of sacrifice. Okay. We need to sacrifice certain things, discard certain things so that it could give room and it can champion this new family vision and dream that we have together. So I think that was such an important episode for that. There's more that we're going to speak about in 2025 around that in season 2. And just a lot of conversations, man, because there was such a powerful moment that resonated with a lot of you who are part of our community currently, right? Yeah. The podcast emphasizes how family, career intersect with marriage. How do you hope episodes like marriage or career, what choice must a husband make, influence societal conversations? I think, this is our lived experience. I'm here. This is part of our work, but it's very intimate because I'm speaking about my marriage. And so another thing that I think we're doing is just demonstrating, how you can have both things exist and how the other one actually needs to feed the other one. And so it's no brainer, right? If I have to choose between doing this podcast or choosing my wife, man, it's no brainer. I'm choosing my wife. Okay. I am choosing my wife. And so hence we intentionally and wholeheartedly and authentically want to thank all our guests and their wives, because it is their wives' story as well. It's not just the husband story. And so we want to make that clear. We would choose our marriages, we would choose our wives over our jobs. But, for the marriage to live in 21st century, man, you need work. Okay, you need work. And so we need to have very honest conversations about just the state of our society and the values that we have as a society. And most of those values, that take priority tend to be monetary values, tend to be values that have to do with, finances. And understandably so, but we cannot have finances trump us as people, trump us as humans, as people who are made in the image of God. Man, we can't have that because we are more important than money. As much as we know that money is a good thing, we need to understand that it's a tool, and a tool is supposed to serve us. It's supposed to serve our marriages and not the other way around. And so we cannot compromise or even justify. Let me say this in this way. We can't justify a husband who's spending more time at the office just because he's justifying that by saying he's providing for his family. Man, you don't just provide finances to your family. You provide joy. You provide stability. You provide spiritual energy. You provide, creative juice. You provide happiness. You provide the psychological culture of your family. You provide more than just money. And I think husbands need to be reminded of that. And so there might be times in your career where you need to make a hard decision that you're going to take less pay just so that you can spend more time with your family. Shout outs to some guests that we've reached out to, and they've said to us, man, listen, whenever we find a gap, we will come, okay? And by that, they mean that even in the week, they couldn't find a gap because maybe they caught up at work. And then I'm like, okay, we can probably shoot on the weekends. They're like, man, weekends, man, are for the family, okay? And I'm like, man, those, I would take that. I would take that and say, I understand, because we want to champion husbands who are there for their families, And so shout outs firstly to all our guests who make gaps to come sit and talk to us, when I know as a husband, you could probably use that time to call your child. You could be at home, or you are taking time from your work that provides for your family to come sit here. And so I respect those guests and thank them for sacrificing their time. And I respect those who have said, man, I have work and I have my family. Whenever somewhere in the year I have a gap, I'll come sit down because I believe in the work that you're doing, but I don't want to come sit down knowing that I unfairly took time away from my family. And so, man, it's been such a great thing to see the guests that have come, to see the guests that we're still waiting for, who will still come and are taken up by their work and family responsibilities. That's what we want to see. We want to see husbands who are truthful to their calling, who are taking it seriously, who are failing forward, who are not champions or heroes at all, but are just men who are getting up and choosing, making the decision over and over and over again. Yeah. What would you say to a hesitant listener who feels marriage isn't for them, to draw them into the podcast community? So two things there. I think you can be part of this community even if you think marriage is not for you. Again, there's a lot of value, there's a lot of truth that comes out of this that's impactful for any human, that will change and impact and encourage and inspire your life in ways that will be meaningful for you, in ways that you can show up as a healthy human. So, man, I think join the community. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us anywhere where you find us, even on audio platforms where you listen to podcasts, because I think there's a lot of value and truth that comes out of this podcast that will benefit you as a human, right? If you are not sure that marriage is for you, man, more reason for you to join, because here's the thing again, we want to retell the story of husbandhood in a healthy way, in a way that's redemptive, in a way that's truthful. Again, guys who come up here, myself included, no superheroes. We don't have capes on, but we are being transparent enough to show you just the level of work that needs to go in for marriage to work, for marriage to be healthy, for marriage to provide a loving environment for our wives and our children. We are here, man, saying we are holding on to brothers. We are trusting God that He's going to empower us so that we can continue walking till the end in ways that will be beneficial for our families. And so I think that's an important picture for you to see if you don't believe that marriage is for you, and for whatever reason, maybe you have hurt, maybe there's a level of brokenness, maybe you've been disappointed, either in relationship, or you've had people who are older who are supposed to be role models for this institution and they've just crumbled before you and you just haven't been able to recover. Here are people that you can be close enough to as you join this community, but they're also further away, so that you can properly heal in your own space, while you're just picking up gems here, while you're picking up truths from time to time that you're going to apply to your own life. So I think it would be dope for you to join, man, and just see how marriage and the story of marriage, particularly the role of husbandhood, is being shaped, it's being portrayed, it's been painted. So and you're more than welcome to ask questions. You're more than welcome to slide in our DMs, right? And ask us questions and just engage with us. And so, man, please pull through, subscribe, join, whether you're married or you're unmarried or you feel some type of way about marriage. I think this would be a perfect launch port for you to just have other humans who care about being healthy humans, right? Yeah. If someone could only listen to one episode to understand the podcast's mission, which one would you recommend and why? Hard question. Hard question. Which one episode can I pick so that you would understand what the mission of this podcast is? I think there's probably three groups that our episodes fall into. I think there might be more, right? But I think there's one group of a bunch of episodes. Top of my head, I can think of Nat's episode, Moose's episode, Solo's episode, even Jabu's episode, where it's just like, man, marriage requires work. Okay, you need to work, graft and graft and graft. So I think that's one bucket that makes up our mission here. Marriage requires work. We are not shy to say that. We are not drunk. We are sober to know that to be a reality. We are in love with our wives, but we know that love requires us to constantly choose them, and in most cases, not choose ourselves and where our deceitful hearts want to take us. And so we want to choose what is right. We want to choose what is healthy. We want to choose what is beneficial for our wives, for our children, for the world around us. In fact, I remember something that Muzi said in his episode where he's like, man, as he's loving his children and his wife in their family, he knows that there's a watching world. And so he wants to work so that the gift of marriage that he's been given, he wants to steward that gift in ways that are beneficial, not just for the people he's holding it for, but for those who are onlookers as well, because how he does it will also inspire somebody else who's on the outside, right? So we know that marriage is work. There's another category where it's like, yo, man, how do we fail forward? That's been something that we're saying over and over and over. So we're gonna work, but we know that we're gonna fail. And so how do we fail forward? Because we don't want to fail on our faces and not recover again. We want to fail forward. And so there's a whole lot of episodes. I think of Justice Mukeli's episode. I think of Pastor Koketso's episode. I think of Pastor Israel's episode. I think of Bevan's episode, where it's Temba Ntuli's episode. We all gonna fail, but we want to fail forward. We want to fail in ways that really set us up to continue running the race, to continue championing the role of husbandhood, to continue adding value not just for our wives but for the world that's watching. So man, we want to work, we want to fail forward. And I think there's a third category of vulnerability, transparency. so so I think of episodes like the one we did with MJ, and led to episodes we did with Soare, episodes that we did with Karabo, episodes that we did with Jules, with Hungani. How can we be transparent? How can we be vulnerable with our wives? Transparent because there's guys in that category who are thinking of marriage. Big Star Johnson was in that category as well. They're looking forward to marriage. So there's a level of transparency that they're bringing, but then there's guys who are in marriage, Hungani, Jules, and just how he was vulnerable, with his story, but also vulnerable in his new marriage. Man, so I think those are probably, and there's probably more, but we know that marriage is work. We want to fail forward, and we want to be vulnerable with our wives and transparent with the world around us. So those categories, I think, will kind of give us a summary of what the mission is here, kind of give us pillars that our mission is resting on, if I should put it that way. Yeah. What themes or challenges are you excited to explore in future episodes that might surprise your audience? I think we're probably gonna um, just dump down on certain topics and go deeper. So I think we've kind of gone wide. We can go wider, but we also want to just go deeper on certain topics. I don't think that they will necessarily surprise you guys, but man, I could tell you one thing for season 2, 2025. There's a host of guests that have agreed to come on the pod that we are super excited for, and excited because of how they just are so unashamedly, publicly, fully loving their brides. And we just admire that. And we want to share their stories with you guys. And so we're super excited for those guests. It's just going to be a lot of cool stories, a lot of inspiring stories, a lot of husbands who are just failing forward again, who know that marriage is work and who want to be as transparent with us and as vulnerable as God would grace them with their wives. And we get to sit in on those thoughts and sit in their lives as they explain how that is working out. So there's a whole lot of that. But there's also a couple of other dope things to look out for next year. So we're definitely gonna release that resource that we've been putting names in. Grace, can I have that? Because somebody might be wondering what that's about, we've been compiling this resource. You know that we've been putting names of husbands in this book. And so we're going to, print it out, make it look amazing, and give it out as a free resource to any husband who's out there who's walking alone, or even if you're not walking alone, but you want to take that and actually bless somebody else that you know, a young man who thinks that marriage is not for him, a young woman who thinks, man, I don't want to, get involved with men. Guys are weird, etc., etc. And it's like, man, here's dudes, right, who are not heroes, who don't have capes, but who are not capping as well. Hey, see what I did there? Don't wear a cape and you don't cap. Nah, I mean, anyway. But they were just genuine dudes, man, loving their wives, loving their children, failing forward. And so look out for that. That's coming. That's going to be a free resource. Thank you so much to everybody who's been saying this is a great idea, because that gives us encouragement to know that we're doing the right thing and we want to continue blessing people. We're also going to have a book that's coming out, so be on the lookout for that. All right, we're going to keep you updated on that. But another thing that we're doing, get your pens ready now. Okay. In fact, take out I forgot what era we live in. Take out your phones. Every end of the month in 2025, we're going to have in-person sessions. Okay. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to keep you updated. If you haven't joined our community where we can slide into your email inbox, do so now. The link is going to be in our comment section. Make sure that you are subscribed to that so that we are emailing you and keeping you updated on what is happening. But if you are part of this community here on YouTube, definitely every Wednesday, we're going to remind you about these in-person sessions that we're going to be having. We're going to have live guests. We're going to have performers. We're going to have a live audience. We're going to have conversations. We're going to interact, network, encourage each other, pray together, build these communities in actual real spaces, so that as this one community goes out, man, it's going to touch people where they are, and we want to touch the ground where people are as well, right? So be on the lookout. That's a big thing for us. We're excited for that because we want to meet you in person. We want to see you. 123,000 of you, man. Yeah, we could fill a room somewhere. We can fill a room somewhere and hang out together so that we are connecting and inspiring and encouraging and blessing each other, so that we can continue retelling the story of husbandhood in more healthy ways. So look out for that. Some of you have asked us for merch. Merch is coming next year, so look out for that as well. That's going to be a super, super exciting thing for us, that you will have a piece of us, not just on the internet, but in your actual home, okay? And that's what family and community is all about, man. So we're looking forward to all of that. How do you envision That Husband podcast shaping conversations about marriage for the next generation? Man, I've said this before, say it again. 123,000 of you have said to us, we can make this thing bigger than we, the team here at That Husband Podcast, have envisioned. Okay. So 120, man, we're a small island somewhere. We're a township somewhere. We're a suburb somewhere. 123,000. Right? So we can just continue growing the suburb. We can continue growing this island, and we can be a country. Okay. And so I think, man, that's one thing that we envision, that this podcast is going to do. It's going to shape conversations off the internet, right? The internet is an important tool, and it's been super helpful and such a blessing for all of us, but we want to see this conversation actually happening around dinner tables. We want to sit here a couple of years from now, and by a couple I mean a lot of years, okay? A lot of years from now, and just meet little Jablani or little Mantla, who, was 14 when we dropped the first episode in 2024. And now he's married, and he's like, man, your podcast really helped me to be the kind of husband that I am today. I'll be gray and handsome and sexy at that point, because salt and pepper, sabangena. Anyway, but I'll say, hey, dog, man, we appreciate you, dog. We appreciate the fact that you stuck it out, and we could be, of some assistance, of some encouragement, of some blessing, of some help, that you are sitting where you're sitting now. And we were able to change a little black boy's life, who is now a husband who's failing forward, who loves his wife, and his generation has changed. His family's legacy has changed. It would be dope to meet a young girl. In fact, there's a young lady who comes to our church. I don't want to expose her, but she said that when she gets a boyfriend, she's gonna say to the boyfriend, "If you're serious about marrying me, watch all these episodes, and then we'll talk." Okay, and then we'll talk. Right? So I'm like, gang, bets, let's do that. Right? So I just want to meet more young ladies who will say, "Man, my husband, was when we started dating, just a dude." Probably didn't have a dad to show him how to be a husband, but he listened to your podcast, and man, that really shaped him to become the husband and the father that he is to us today. Dope. That, come on, man. Come on, right? And so we want to see more of those, and that's going to take time. That's going to take time. It's not going to be an instant thing. It's going to take time. As I think about my daughter, who's 5 years old now, when she grows up one day and she stumbles across this content, or I just introduce it to her, when she can comprehend the stuff that we're saying now, man, I want her to be like, dope. I know then what to look out for. I know what kind of marriage I can aspire to. I know what kind of conversations I should be having with a man. I obviously pray to God that I'll still be alive to walk her through all of that stuff. But man, here's a resource for her generation, that they will use this thing to impact their lives, right? And so, man, we look forward to that. We look forward to that, and that's what we want this thing to do for the next generation, guys. Thank you so much for everybody who's been commenting. Thank you so much to everybody who's reached out, who's inboxed us. Man, we were super, just touched, grateful to know that the work that we're putting out is impacting real lives. And so your responses, your feedback through your comments has just been such an encouraging thing. It's been a helpful thing for us. And so we wanted to honor you. We wanted to read some of those comments and just react to them as well, and just add one or two things, as we wrap up the year, as we say thank you. These are just some of the comments that we wanted to bring out. So the first comment is from Tsepiso Johannes, right? And he says, crazy, every time you ask your guests about who inspires them in their marriage journey, I just realize how I wouldn't be able to answer the same, as there aren't such people around my spaces. But then again, I'm unmarried with a grim outlook on the idea of marriage. I'm in a profession in the legal space wherein I've facilitated numerous divorces. No wonder this space is so impacting, seeing men speak so boldly about their journeys. Man, what can we say to that? Again, this is why we make this content. This is why we come up here on these microphones and speak, to encourage somebody like Tsepiso. Man, we want to say thank you to you. Thank you that you stuck around with us. Thank you that you were even vulnerable enough or transparent enough to reach out and say, this is what I'm thinking, this is where I'm at, and this is how the space is really impacting me. There's many Tsepisos out there. There's many out there who feel the same way. And let me just say this, guys, just the fact that there's death that exists, it does not mean that people don't want to live. Just because death exists, it doesn't mean that people should not be excited about life. Just because there is darkness, it doesn't mean that people now shun the light away. Not at all. And so, in that same sense, just because the rates of divorce are increasing in our country, it doesn't mean that we should not be encouraged to press into marriages. The rates of divorce shouldn't scare us, that marriage doesn't work. In fact, it should encourage us to want to do those three things: work hard, show up and fail forward, and be vulnerable with our spouses. Okay, so that we can decrease those numbers. Okay, in fact, the rates of divorce, say to a podcast like ours, man, there's still more work for us to do so we can change the next generation's rates. We don't want generations after us to increase the rates of divorce, but instead we want to shift that tide, and we want to make sure that those rates decrease. Just because the rates of divorce are there, it does not mean that we should be discouraged to press into the gift and the blessing, the institute of marriage. In fact, we should do more of that so that we can kill those numbers. Right? So shout outs to you, Tsepiso, man, and thanks for reaching out. Tebogo says, what I got from this conversation is being chosen. Both Lily and Black chose each other and still continue to do so. Relationships are not easy, but if you are chosen, it's everything because you are chosen at your best and at your worst. That alone gives you the strength to fight for your love because you know that you are wanted and backed through thick and thin. Kaneti. You are chosen and given room to grow. May this kind of love locate all of us who wish for it. Loving is easy when you are chosen because you can fall hard knowing that your hearts will be protected till death do you apart. May God continue to bless your union. The constant word that she repeats there sums it all up. Chosen. Chosen. Okay. We as husbands need to know that love is not just a feeling. Wives need to know that as well. It is a choice that is not devoid of feelings. It is a choice that, when taken correctly, comes with a whole great deal of amazing feelings. But it's a choice nevertheless. It's a choice that needs to be made every single day. It's a choice that needs to be made when I wake up and I look at my wife, and I could choose at that point to just be angry and upset and be petty about something, or I could choose otherwise. Even in my choice of choosing otherwise, I can also choose to address the thing that I would have used to choose to be petty. Okay. So it's always a choice, man. And that's what makes this thing challenging, but it also makes it amazing because once I've made the choice and the choice is received, man, it really inspires me. It makes me feel loved. It makes me feel respected and honored. It makes me feel cared for. And so choice really sums it up. And so thank you for that. Thank you that we can, me and my wife, again, just exhibit what it looks like in real time to illustrate conversations, to participate in a conversation in front of a watching world. And that inspires people in their own lives, in their own marriages, in their own relationship stage, wherever you are. And so continue choosing. Choose life, choose what's right, choose marriage, choose to be a husband if you're not, choose to be a wife if you're not, man. There's a lot of blessing here. And every single day, choose, 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 because it's easy to choose otherwise, because naturally we are inclined to do so as broken, sinful people. But man, choosing what's good, choosing what's healthy, that's going to require, some strength. But you have it. God is going to grace you. Your spouse is going to love you. We are here championing you as a community, as part of your family. Man, let's do this thing so that we are really changing the story of what marriage and husbandhood looks like in our country, right? Theotainment Pictures says, enlightening. I am getting married in a week. So I have been feeling anxious about this big step. I am in a space where I am acknowledging the fact that I do not have it all figured out, but I know I will embrace the beautiful mess that is coming my way. Thanks, gents. We grow because you've grown. Man, shout outs to you, bro. Thank you so much. And again, our growth, yes, is for our own marriages, but man, as we come on these cameras, these microphones, we can then share that growth with you. And we've seen how it's inspired you. And thank you for this feedback of how it is helping you grow. Such an apt, I think that's the word, description of what marriage is. A beautiful mess. It's chaotic beauty, right? That's what marriage is, because you are literally two universes coming together, not just planets. So if Earth and Mars come together, man, they have to figure out their little ways of doing life. But two universes coming together with planets in them, with experiences, with family culture, with, backgrounds, educationally, socially, psychologically, yay, yay, yay. It's a beautiful mess. It's a mess, but it's a beautiful one. And as we find each other and live to see what oneness actually looks like in real time, man, it is such a beautiful thing. It's an amazing thing. It's going to be chaotic. And in those chaotic moments, we need to find each other. So, man, I think at this point, Theo is definitely married, because this, was a couple of months ago. Well, in fact, it was 3 weeks ago. So you should be married by now, man. If you're not, go check out last week's episode with Soare. Just to encourage you as you look forward to what marriage is, man. So yeah, shout outs to you, man, and thanks for that, brother. Mankay 2000 says, I think it would be cool if y'all could do a campaign to get a husband who's an everyday man, not necessarily a public figure of any sort, to be a guest on the podcast. Maybe a social media campaign where people could nominate somebody to be a guest, hashtag Nyana, or something like that. Maybe it would get more followers out of it, or you'd get more followers out of it, or even general visibility for the channel. Probably a different perspective, or maybe even different issues might come up. I think y'all get what I'm saying and can clean it up a bit. As always, I appreciate the content. Man, we appreciate you. We thank you so much for reaching out. And here's the thing with that comment. It's not the first time we get that comment. We've gotten it on Instagram. We've gotten it several times here on YouTube. But here's the thing. On Loiso's Loiso Pala's episode, there was a comment that kind of answers this, where the lady said, and I paraphrase, man, this was such a refreshing take to see Loyiso as a human and not as a celebrity. And that's what we've tried to do over and over and over. We appreciate any husband because of how they've publicly displayed the way they love their wives. Okay. Some people, and let me just say it here, some people have slid into our DMs and they've said, man, I want to come on the thing. And we like, man, this would be great. And they tell us their story. But, as part of the research team here, we need to think about people's lives and where they're at. Because another thing that we need to do is not just protect our platform or our brand, but we need to protect people's lives. And so if we really don't have enough evidence of somebody loving their wife that any other person can back up, it makes it really hard for us to then, get that person to sit across me and we have a conversation. And so we doing our due diligence to really, vet stories, to see people who are loving their wives. And there's been a lot of other guests who don't, quote unquote, have a public persona, right? Who have been sitting with me having conversations. And again, I say, which I think I said it to Privo, I said it to David, that man, the thing that qualifies anybody to sit across the table from me is just being a husband who's failing forward, who's trying this thing, who's unashamedly, publicly, boldly loving their wives. And that's the thing that really qualifies anybody to sit across the table from me. Again, there's people that you probably didn't know. In fact, there was another comment of somebody saying, man, after watching some of these episodes, I just went to try and find these guys, and there's a majority of them that I didn't know, So I'm like, okay, I think there's a fair share of just ordinary guys. In fact, all of them are ordinary husbands. But then to answer the question more directly, I think there is a fair share of just ordinary guys that people don't know of. But the thing that we always bring and the thing that unites us is us being husbands who are failing forward, who are loving our wives, who are really taking this call seriously and not necessarily what we do for a living, right? But thanks for that, and we appreciate it, man. And we definitely, reaching out to wider people. There's people who are not in the city that we're in that we are trying to get, and so what we want to do is also do some audio recordings outside of the audio recordings that we do here, and then those episodes will just be exclusive audio episodes. We'll tell you guys about that. And then we'll hopefully get to hear stories of guys in other countries, right? I have friends in different countries, in Zambia, friends in the States, friends that I speak to in other African countries, and people in Swaziland, Lesotho. So there's guys that I've been chatting to. So not even outside of the country, guys that I'm friends with in Cape Town, in KZN, who are not in Gauteng. That's where we are. Man, we want to hear those stories as well. And so we want to try and reach out to them, maybe through audio, and then we'll let you guys know about those episodes. But we definitely want to have as many stories of husbands as we can. Okay, here's the next comment. In fact, that's the comment I was referring to now in the other comment. Neo or Neo Gift says, your podcast has been a platform to introduce me to other men that are doing great work out there. I've come across names that I've never seen before. And with that, I've began to follow them in their own platforms to learn and be inspired. Great work you're doing, bro. Much appreciated. Every conversation is an opportunity to learn and fail forward. To learn and grow, rather. Hashtag failing forward. man, could only salute to that. Right? Shout outs to you. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. And guys, be encouraged to do the same thing. Go follow other people, even follow each other in the comment section. Let's build this community and really, exchange ideas, care for each other, bless each other in ways that are meaningful, as we all interact. Every Wednesday at Hoppers 11, we together here, or throughout Wednesday, in fact. And so let's connect. Let's make this, more worthwhile and meaningful in ways that will be beneficial, just beyond us connecting on a screen, right? So let's connect. At Ntuduzi Malibongwe Butelezi says, a podcast I didn't know I needed. Big up, man. Shout outs to you. Yeah, we didn't know we needed this podcast ourselves. So we knew we wanted to do it, but as we putting out these episodes, we realizing, man, this stuff is hitting us as much as it's hitting other people, and maybe we needed this more than anyone else needed it, right? So it's been such a great thing for us to experience that the same way that you're experiencing it, man. So shout outs to you, Mdu. Oh yes, Asi says, this is funny. I feel like I'm in another world. Since when are men right? Aibo, I'm shook. I need to tell people about this. Men talking sense. I've always wondered what men talk about when they're alone, right? I think this also speaks to the heart of what it is that we're doing here. It's hard. Let me probably just be transparent here. It's hard for us as men to be lumped up with other men that are really not showing up in ways that are healthy. Although we understand it because, to some extent, those guys are brothers. To some extent, those guys are made in God's image as much as we made in God's image. And so I've heard the cry from our female counterparts to say, we lump you guys up so that in that lump, you guys can probably punch the guy next to you and say, dude, man up and stop doing the rubbish that you're doing, right? And so we get that, and we wanna continue helping brothers who are showing up in ways that are not healthy. We want to help them to restore, to transform, to redeem, so that they can show up in ways that are healthy. But at the same time, man, we realize that there is guys who are really trying hard. There are guys who are failing forward. There are men who are showing up and taking their role as husbands, as fathers, seriously, as leaders. There are men who are saying, man, we want to be there for our wives, for our children. We want to love them faithfully, wholeheartedly. We want to care for them. And so we want to champion those guys. And we want to say, again, the group of guys who are not showing up in ways that are healthy shouldn't deter us from championing the guys who are showing up in ways that are healthy. In fact, we want to champion these guys so much that their light shines bright, that it draws these other guys into the light, or even helps them to come to terms with what they're doing. Because again, people don't wake up and just decide to be people who are unhealthy. There's a lot of things that has happened to them. There's a lot of other underlying issues, and so sometimes people just need to have a light that they can then see the mess that they in. They might not even be realizing that they're in a mess because they've had their guards up. They've defended themselves for so long that they started to blur the lines between protecting people, loving people, having to show up as a leader and providing for people, and just losing themselves and damaging the people they're supposed to care for. But they need the light to see that, man, you might be swimming in muddy waters yourself. And so we want to champion. I want to champion guys who are doing well in that regard, so that we can help all men, all husbands. Right? Um, Lastly, this is from Ricardo. Um, and Ricardo Lemuchang, I think. Yeah, sorry if I'm butchering your name, Ricardo Lemuchang. This is the best bro chat beyond the endearing exchange of wisdom and inquisition. The language, the laughs are beautiful between Labafuetu. Above all, what an enlightening discourse. And thank you. Those kind of comments really, just help us to realize, to some extent, you're not insane. Again, this is we're having conversations, but we're having them with cameras and microphones. Okay, a world far removed from our world, people would just have conversations around the dinner table, at a coffee shop, around lunch, etc., etc. But the world has become more smaller because of social media. The world has become more global, inclusive. Because of social media, and so to some extent, we all getting used to having conversations in this way, and so the next generation will probably, this will just be second nature to them, and so there is a weird sense in us having to acclimatize to speaking into microphones and cameras. But man, it's those comments like these that help us to say you're not going crazy. Continue doing what you're doing. This is beneficial. This is helpful for a lot of us. So we want to thank you and we want to shout you out, man. Really, really appreciate those comments. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this particular episode. It was a special one for us to, just come here with a posture of gratefulness, gratitude, thankfulness, because of the community that you are part of. We not just, on our own, but we together. Again, 123,000 of us championing this mission of retelling the story of husbandhood in healthy ways. Want to thank every single one of you again for journeying with us. Guys, we are less than a year. In fact, next year in March 2025, we want to have a party, right? We want to have a party where we're all going to celebrate our first year as a community, as a family, as a podcast, as a platform. And we want to just be in one room celebrating and just, championing each other, again, encouraging each other, blessing each other to see where this is going to go, right? We have dreams, we have hopes, we have aspirations. We really want to see this country change, this continent change, and hopefully the world around us change, okay? And so, man, we are super grateful. In less than a year, you have helped us to really build such a thriving community, such a community that is involved, a community that is engaging with us, in a community that's sharing their stories of transformation, of restoration, their stories of redemption. It's been such an amazing journey. You've seen with all the credits, whenever we end our episodes, man, I am not alone here. Lily Million, who's helping us, she's here. She's part of the team. Grace, who's helping us, he's part of the team. Myself, who's helping us, I'm part of the team. And there's many other people behind the scenes that are championing what we're doing, who are really coming through together, who are, putting in their hand there, putting in their feet there, their ear there. There's many people whose ears that we talk off when we want to do some changes or we want to move in a particular direction. So there's been people who've been praying for us. There's been people who've been just championing us in the corridors, people who've seen us at malls, people who've seen us in grocery stores, who've come to us and said, man, thank you. We really and truthfully appreciate what it is that you guys are doing. And so we want to thank you. We want to thank you and thank everybody who's been a part of making this thing happen. Don't forget, next year we are kicking off season 2, probably the second week of Jan. That's when we're going to kick it off. So please just keep your notifications on. But what we're also going to do is, one, if you haven't watched all our episodes, man, binge watch that stuff during the holidays. I'd sit down with a family member or with your whole family, sit down with friends, binge watch the stuff, chat about it. Still let us know what you think about all the stuff that we've spoken about. So, man, leave Netflix, binge watch on the stuff, okay? Over the holidays, it would be dope for you to spend Christmas with content that's wholesome and healthy and good for your mind. And it's going to help you just become a better human as you move forward to 2025, right? So you can do that. But what we're also doing is kind of just dropping smaller segments of all our episodes. So look out for that. Click on those, share it with other people. Let them know what's happening here at That Husband Podcast as we look forward to next year. A couple of other things just to keep in mind. Don't forget to like, to subscribe, to hit the notification bell so that you're updated. We're not changing our times. We are still on a Wednesday at 11:30. Every week. That's what we're going to be doing. If you haven't joined our community through our mailing list, do so. There's a link in our description. Go click on that now and let's connect. Let's connect so that next year we are together. We are in person every single month. Next year, beginning from the end of Feb, we are together in person. So bear in mind, keep that in mind. We're going to have amazing live sessions together. It's going to be such a dope thing. Merch is coming, books are coming. It's just going to be such an incredible time together. If you haven't followed us on the other platforms, TikTok and Instagram, go do so. We hang out there as well. And we have amazing and dope conversations there as well, right? So, man, from me here at That Husband Podcast, from the team, man, it's been such a great season one. It's been such a great year. We will see you next year. Love your family. Have a good downtime, rest, and let's continue building next year. Let's continue championing husbands. Let's continue retelling the story of husbandhood in healthy ways. We gonna see you next year. God bless. Be amazing. Be champions. Be great. Be all of the amazing, nice things. Eat 14 colors. Guys, we're going to have 21 colors. 21 colors. Because it's Christmas. Okay? Get the Christmas clothes. Yeah? Dress nice. Feel happy. Buy your spouse some Christmas clothes. Okay? Wives, please don't buy us socks and ties. We want other things. Buy me an iPhone. For the iPhone. Yeah, just iPhone. Or you can just buy me a Merc. Okay? Yeah? Buy me a nice car. All right? Yes, please. I'm tired of socks. We have enough socks, but we don't have enough cars or enough iPhones or enough smart watches. All right? So please, we want to thank you. And we want to say God bless. All right? Man, let me not get into trouble. We'll see you next year. Boo, 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 boo. Happy New Year, happy Christmas, happy birthday, happy promotion, happy birth of your child, happy everything. All right? We'll see you next year. All right?